Castel del Monte and Apulia, Castel del Monte and Friedrich II, Castel del Monte and the architecture. More generally, an extraordinary castle for more reasons than one. A region, an emperor. The architectural discipline and so many knowledges. The research conducted within the DICAR, an architecture department within the Politecnico of Bari, on the architectural and functional themes of Castel del Monte has now reached its 7th year. From the first observations, focused on the presence of particular unusual elements in Friedrich's castle, a series of in-depth and wide-ranging research which had national and international acclaim has been developed. Here we are, inside the famous octagonal courtyard of Castel del Monte. Many functional hypotheses have been made on this castle, and one of these comes directly from researchers of the Politecnico of Bari. They are experts in construction and stereotomy of the stone. According to a team of architects from the University of Bari, Castel del Monte may be a thermal center. This study is a demonstration of a thorough research path starting with a doctorate in architecture, thanks to the dedication and passion of Giuseppe Fallacara and Ubaldo Occhinegro. They have made significant discoveries involving multiple disciplines. The fundamental text when studying a monument is the text in stone that should be considered as it was an open book, but you must have the eyes to know how to read it and decipher it and to know the techniques used to build it.
Quindi bisogna conoscere le tecniche con cui è stato costruito.
Our school is specialized in the knowledge of traditional and modern stone working techniques. The school is the only one in Italy to have regular courses of stereotomy, the art of stoneworking, as not only the art of cutting stone, but also as the science of static and aesthetic conception of stone architecture. Castel del Monte represents the symbol made in stone of the philosophical thought of its commissioner, Friedrich II, and in it, a broadly of varied Mediterranean cultural, scientific, architectural, artistic, symbolic and technological influences converge. The real core of the research is the determination of its functional nature and how it opened the way to numerous interpretations ranging from historiographical and scientific hypotheses to esoteric speculations. The enigma is based on two aspects: the uniqueness of its form and a lack of documentation that makes explicit its original function and use. The investigation of Castel del Monte started by observing some architectural details of the monument, from which all the subsequent multidisciplinary studies were born. Among the most significant and unique details, there are these particular internal and external moldings of the castle. I want to show you something. These walls, this particular carves of the stone and here some channels, they were used to collect water. During the study and the meticulous relief work, emerged that the benches with a particular marble canalization molding that were in all the rooms of the first floor of the castle had the function of collecting and the condensed water. This was part of the most sophisticated hydraulic system present in the castle. The refined construction technique of these marble channeling moldings highlights the morphological specificity of its function as water collector. This particular molding has two different functions, decorative but especially functional. It is called canalization because it has the ability to gather condensed water. They are generally found in the columns of the Gothic cathedrals and in the contours of the walls, so that the condensed water which forms on the walls drips and is collected in these moldings. Next, it evaporates or remains there until the climatic situation allows it to evaporate.
par exemple, on peut tout à fait la trouver.
For example, you can find this type of system in baths in the Middle East to avoid the overflow of water. In Castel del Monte, it is evident that it is an internal condensation because the creation of a channel molding was foreseen as necessary in order to manage the large volume of water or the enormous humidity inside the room.
L'humidité à l'intérieur de la pièce.
L'intero apparato architettonico del castello.
The entire architectural system of the castle was conceived and designed to collect as much rainwater as possible through the roofing and walls. The height of the threshold that separates the chambers suggests the need to partition environments so that the water wouldn't drain away on the floor. The chimneys on the ground floor are placed to mark the stages of a process or route that follows the chambers through a single access, and a blind wall equipping bathrooms with cold water. Upstairs, there are two rectangular niches in red Gargano gravel crowning the chimney. Their presence was both decorative and functional. Today, the elaborate mouldings in the doorways of the rooms can be seen inlaid with the same red gravel, probably the last vestige of beautiful door frames that marked the transition from one room to another. The stone benches in all the rooms on the upper floor have never been seen in castles like this before, and their function has never been explained. Drain holes beneath them suggest the presence of a hydraulic drainage system that has never been explored before. All these architectural details suggest that the building was designed to contain a large amount of water. The use of soft limestone tooth and masonry, perhaps, that made the construction process easier, is compensated for by a system of rectangular hooks discovered on the ceiling that apparently supported a secondary structure of wooden beam. This was covered by a waterproof coating of hydraulic mortar and mosaic tiles to prevent the steam from damaging the tufa. Truncated cone-shaped copper tubes, still visible, were used to drain the excess steam from the walls. The most important hydraulic system on which our work has been concentrated is the invisible one, because hidden in the walls and into inaccessible parts of the monument, starting from the hanging tanks on the towers. The hanging tanks were the only technological device known in the Middle Ages in order to fill the lower floors with running water. The rainwater collected from the roofs, accumulated in the 5 hanging tanks on the top of towers, fell into narrow channels set within the walls of the towers, creating the pressure needed to feed sinks and the fountain of the atrium, with jets and water features. The presence of the vertical pipes inside the towers was witnessed by the master Mangione, who took part in the restoration of some portions of the lead canalization present inside the walls of the towers. Lead terminals, probably equipped with the siphon, emerging from the hole in the wall, still visible today over the marble wash basins of the small octagonal rooms, have been lost, as has the whole non-structural, decorative, functional apparatus of the castle. Surely, the most important architectural element that has been lost is the large octagonal marble basin that was present in the center of the courtyard, of which, however, there is ample historical evidence. Another of the most significant architectural elements for the purification through water is surely the majestic octagonal marble basin present in the center of the courtyard, a place for ablutions, as ascertained by most of the scholars of Castel del Monte from the 1600s to the early 1800s, when it was destroyed and looted.
D'Amato, nel centro del cortile, una vasca ottagonale.
In 1600, D'Amato attests to have seen in the center of the courtyard an octagonal basin so big that it leaves only the passage around. In 1686, Pacicelli describes a noble atrium in which a source of cold and light water adorns it in the middle and in a sufficient quantity to quench an army. In 1743, Trelli asserts the courtyard is also eight-angled as outside, with its cisterns in the middle.
Commenta così la presenza importante.
In 1757, even Francesco d'Autilia, an official at the Corte Borbonica of Caserta, commented on the important presence of water inside the abandoned castle when evaluating the hypothesis of disassembling the columns. These could be replaced with rusty pillars easily achievable given the abundance of stones and the possibility of procuring lime, which you can have in the same place where there are wells, plentiful pools of water, and woods very close to make up a big limestone line. In 1772, Riccardo Colavecchia revealed it as a large courtyard in which you can see a pile, or better a white octagonal marble vase, of a size that would have been astonishing to have to carry from the top of the nearby mountain, which is about half-mile high. Even Harry Swinburne tells us that the courtyard located at the center of the building contains an octagonal marble basin of amazing dimensions. Bringing it to the top of such a hill must have taken an immense effort. In 1780, also Giovanni Pastore declares in 4 of these towers 4 receptacles of water can be seen, which were used for bathing in the summer times. In 1842, the basin was destroyed a few years before, as Riccardo D'Usso recounted. Like this bath, admirably carved to be used in baths, with a marble basin and hollow seats, which I remember having seen in the courtyard, was destroyed. In 1895, Emanuele Merra wrote, "In the middle of this magnificent building, an octagonal and very spacious court opens up. In the second half of the last century, in the center of it, there was still an octagonal basin of white marble and of a diameter so marvelous that it seemed unbelievable that it could have been carried to that hill. In the interior of it, there were seats hollowed out. It seems to have been used for baths. This marvelous tub is not there anymore. Vandalism reduced it to dust." The historical sources repeatedly speak of the presence of abundant water at the site of construction of Castel del Monte. The question should be if there is any other historical evidence in this regard. Perhaps the first clue is contained within the name of the place where today stands Castel del Monte. It is known that some medieval sources mention the name Sancta Maria de Monte Balneoli in reference to a pre-existing Benedictine monastery which has now disappeared. The term Balneoli refers unequivocally to the practice of bathing. The presence of water has also influenced the toponyms of different places surrounding the monument. That medieval Murgia at the ages of Friedrich II was rich with clean waters and uncontaminated landscapes. It's evident from a series of toponyms related to the presence of water near the castle, and especially from the name of the monastery Santa Maria del Monte Balneo, Little Bath, which occupied the hill of Castel del Monte before its construction. The dedication of a place or of a church to the pure water were very frequent in the religious traditions. They were the direct testimonies of the presence of numerous natural water supply basins, but also, and perhaps most importantly, they are a sign of the perception by the populations of the miraculous and life-giving properties of these waters. Waters that very often arise from the subsoil as a typical manifestations of a karst territory like Apulia. The presence of these water-related toponyms led us to address the analysis of the castle subsoil by commissioning a survey using electric tomography below the monument for a radius of about 2,000 meters. All this was to understand if the castle was actually built in its location due to the presence of water. In addition, investigations were carried out with georadar inside and outside the monument itself in order to rediscover traces of hidden hydraulic systems. The results were amazing.
Questa è la grotta di Castel del Monte.
This is the cave of Castel del Monte, so called by the Registry of the Caves of Apulia region and identified with Pew 600.
È una piccola cavità carsica.
It is a small karst cavity inside which various formations of stalactites and pizzolates have been found, and it is a classic example of karst shapes on the Murgia Plateau.
Quelle che sono le forme carsiche dell'altopiano della Murgia. Ci troviamo sul pendio.
We are on the northern slope of the hill of Castel del Monte, and we are about 4,075 meters above the sea level. This is the regional technical map updated by the region of Apulia. We find ourselves in alignment with the wood that surrounds the castle, along the path that leads to the castle. Below this path there is a water pipeline of the Apulian aqueduct that feeds the necessary water to Castel del Monte.
Proprio a Castel del Monte. Al di sotto di questo sentiero esiste proprio una condotta idrica dell'acquedotto pugliese che adduce l'acqua necessaria a Castel del Monte. Allora, questo è uno stendimento di...
This is a radius of 2,040 meters with spacing between the stakes every 10 meters. We are injecting electric currents and measuring resistance. Ultimately, we will have a section in 2 dimensions that will give us the map of the resistance of the hill of Castel del Monte.
Dello stendimento, la mappa della resistività della collina di Castel del Monte.
Il cerchio si chiude.
The circle closes if we consider the outcome of the recent geological service of the Castel del Monte subsoil, carried out thanks to the contribution of Professor Ruggero Quarto of the Department of Earth Science of the University of Bari.
Quindi abbiamo individuato
Below the castle, we have identified some stratifications of less compact and therefore more fractured limestone.
più fratturati, calcificati, laddove potrebbe essere anche possibile la presenza di acqua.
Where the presence of water may be possible. The electric tomography has provided us with another very important element, the identification of high definition of some less resistant subsoil zones, where the possible presence of water cannot be attributed to the deep water layer.
L'eventuale presenza di acqua non può essere attribuita alla falda carsica profonda, ma
However, in these semi-superficial layers, there could be water in the form of suspended basins, only where the geological layers, made up of limestones and red earth, form compact impermeable layers on which some groundwater is suspended.
sui quali si sospende qualche falda freatica. C'è un elemento molto importante. Attraverso tutto il rilievo
There is a very important element. Through all the surveys carried out, we have noticed some directions along the ones that distribute the resistant values in the subsoil, in particular a northwest-southeast route that represents a tectonic fault line. This fault is located just below the Castel del Monte at a depth of about 70-90 meters.
rappresenta una direttrice tettonica, una direttrice di fagliamento del sottosuolo.
Georadar surveys were conducted both on the outside and inside the castle and were able to detect the presence of an already known element, a large storage tank for water.
Del castello. Sia all'esterno del castello, sia nell'area interna al castello al piano terra e sia al primo
Both
piano.
surveys were conducted on the first floor, below the benches, approximately in the middle part, where some interesting radar anomalies have been found that seem to indicate drainage of the hidden waters beneath the benches, gaps that generated radar signals that can certainly be traced to drains.
Rilevato questo elemento. Al primo piano invece sono state condotte delle indagini sui muri. Al di sotto delle panche, all'incirca nella parte mediana della panca, sono state riscontrate sempre delle anomalie piuttosto interessanti, radar, che fanno pensare ad un invito allo scolo delle acque posizionato al di sotto della panca, quindi dei vuoti che hanno generato dei segnali radar riflessi, ma che potrebbero essere ricondotte a delle condotte.
Le evidenze geologiche e geotecniche sulla presenza dell'acqua.
The geological and geotechnical evidence of the presence of water in the castle's basement and therefore of canalization for drainage would find striking confirmation also in the updated translation of the emperor's only document relating to its construction. The lack of direct sources and the controversial interpretation of the above is the real historical problem of the monument. From a correct translation of the source, it has been once again possible to trace a reference to water. The only document of the time of Frederick II in which we speak of Castel del Monte dates back to January 29, 1240. In the letter, the emperor ordered for the protector of Capitanata, Riccardo di Montefuscolo, to immediately build the Attractus.
Cum procastro quod apud sanctam Mariam de Monte fieri volumus per te licet de tua jurisdictione non sit, instanter fieri velimus ac tractum, fidelitati tue precipiendo mandamus, quatinus ac tractum ipsum in calce lapidibus, et omnibus alis opportunis fieri facias sine mora. Significaturus nobis frequenter, quid inde duxeris facendum, tale in hoc studio abiturus, ut sicut hoc specialitater sollicitudini tue commictimus.
Per attractus.
For attractus, there are 7 different meanings. I prefer to give the word attractus the meaning of channel.
Ho preferito dare alla parola attractus il valore di canale, canalis.
Many preferred the meaning of attractus as building material.
Hanno preferito quello di attractus come materiale edilizio, materiale da costruzione. Poi i riferimenti si possono trovare sui testi. Canalis in quam.
Canalis in quam aqua attraitur, a channel in which water is drawn. This is the semantic explanation of the term.
Come dire, semantica del termine.
È possibile dunque?
Is it possible that Frederick II intended to complete a canal to divert water with limestones and whatever was necessary? From the architectural point of view, it can be assumed that this channel can be identified with wells for the sourcing of groundwater, whose presence inside the building has recently been confirmed by the superintendent of the restoration work carried out at the beginning of the 70s.
Quando si poteva, si lavorava all'interno, quando proprio le piogge erano forti.
When we could, we worked inside the wells. When, in fact, it rained too heavily to work outside. The wells in which we worked at the width of 80 by 80 centimeters. Others were 1 meter and 20 centimeters. They ranged from a depth of 14 meters to a maximum of 60 meters. The last 60 meter well had a branch of tunnels at the bottom, which we saw when we arrived at the bottom of the well. There was a tunnel on the right, one on the left and one in the center. We always went down the wells in tows because one had to keep the other safe. On the bottom, we found traces of bones of animals such as deer and wild boar.
Queste pulizie stavano insieme dei frammenti di ossa, di animali, di cervi, cinghiali.
The multidisciplinary investigations conducted have strengthened and substantiated the initial hypothesis of our study that intuitively led us to compare Castel del Monte to a thermal machine in some ways similar to the first Arab plants called hammam. In addition to presenting all the water supply systems from above for the rains and from below for the water supply from the subsoil, the investigations have uncovered unique architectural details that are absolutely unique to the time and that can only be associated with the spa facilities.
Il più antico hammam ancora funzionante qua a Istanbul, quello di Jalalo.
We are inside the oldest hammam still working in Istanbul, Jalalo. It is a very particular place, and inside has some situations that are in some way comparable to Castel del Monte. It is possible that Frederick II saw a hammam, today called Wellness Center, Surely he was never here in Turkey, but he probably came to know about it during the crusade of 1228, when he went to Jerusalem and reconquered it, a crusade full of success, but without battles. But what would Castel del Monte have in common with this place? Much. To begin with the path, cold rooms, warm rooms, hot rooms, and then the marble that covers the walls. But there is something more refined, the recovery and recirculation of water, an element that we also find in the castle of Friedrich II.
Il recupero delle acque, il ricircolo delle acque, una cosa che troviamo anche nel castello di Federico II. È arrivato il momento.
And now, the moment has arrived for us to enter the heart of this hammam, where the temperature is very high.
Qua, attento, teniamo la porta, ecco qua.
The steps, the thresholds, to manage the water on the floors, the channels to direct the water were necessary, loopholes where the heat comes out, and then the octagon. See here, there is a large octagon in the middle. There are 8 arches surrounding this environment. The octagons are found several times in these places, and in Castel del Monte the octagon is the protagonist. They are countless.
Protagonista, se ne contano moltissimi.
La tradizione araba dei bagni riscaldati.
The Arab tradition of heated baths evoked the tradition of Roman baths, but with smaller structures called hammam, from the Arabic warm-up, and with a simpler bathing procedure. In the Roman baths, after physical activity, one entered the tepidarium, then the calidarium, and finally the laconicum, the final warmest room, heated with dry air at a very high temperature. Finally, after cleansing the body and massages, a swim took place in the frigidarium pool, followed by frequent visits to libraries or shows. In the Arab tradition, however, the cycle is reduced and inverted. The hammam is essentially made up of 3 rooms where one can wash oneself. One room is very hot, harara, one lukewarm, and the last one fresh. It usually starts from the warmest room. At the end of the cycle, massages can be performed.
Abbiamo avviato una ricerca sulle...
We started a research on the thermal performances of Castel del Monte to get more information about the ancient functions of this mysterious architecture.
Misteriosa architettura. Siamo partiti dallo...
We started from the study of an environment on the upper floor where all the architectural evidence shows the possible presence of a thermal center. This environment was heated by a large fireplace that supplied energy to a kettle that saturated the environment of steam and heated the water that was then used in tubs and relaxing baths. A first evaluation was to demonstrate that such a plant configuration could ensure the thermo-hygrometric well-being condition of a thermal center.
Di dimostrare che questa configurazione impiantistica potesse assicurare condizioni di benessere termigrometrico proprio di un centro termale anche di quell'epoca. Per fare questo abbiamo utilizzato un programma.
To do this, we used a simplified fluid dynamics simulation program which could deal with the difficulties of virtual reconstruction and configuration and with the available calculation capabilities.
E con le capacità di calcolo disponibili all'interno del Dipartimento.
Si ottengono delle temperature
Temperatures of about 21 degrees, which during the winter are optimal for a thermal environment, were obtained. In the same way, there was an improvement in the air speed with the ignition of the chimney, while convective motions were triggered inside the environment. The airspeed was around 0.17 meters per second, which is an optimal value for the thermo-hygrometric well-being within the environment. Considering that the environment was saturated with humidity due to the presence of the enormous kettle inside the fireplace, we can say that optimal thermo-hygrometric conditions were reached in the environment and for a thermal use too.
Dell'ambiente e anche per la destinazione d'uso a carattere termale.
The use of spa facilities annexed to the palaces of the Roman era were not rare even in medieval Islamic architecture, as evidenced by the baths of the Caesar Amra Caliphate Palace in Transjordan.
Federico visita i palazzi califfali durante...
Federico visits the Caliphate buildings during the Second Crusade and is certainly impressed. In Arab Norman Sicily, the use of hammams is a practice still very present at the time of Friedrich II. Some examples are the favara or the bagni di Cefaladiana. The ability to direct and govern the waters and to organize the architectural spaces functionally in a logical and apparently maze-like way derives from these Islamic influences as the Swabian card.
La forma ottagonale di Castel del Monte.
The octagonal shape of Castel del Monte gathers and organizes in a sublime way the labyrinthine distribution of the space services. Once entered the triumphal entry portal, open to the east, one was greeted by the first room on the ground floor. From here, he entered the second room. These two rooms represented a functional unit of welcome and break, a filter between the outside world and the heart of the structure. The central frigidarium of the court enclosed the sky in an octagon with white walls. The large fountain was carved into a single block of white marble, inviting you to wash and purify yourself before starting the body care path. The presence of two decorated portals divided the routes at this point. Both gave access to a succession of two adjoining and homogeneous rooms, but the one placed to the north was more imposing, and the one to the southwest more modest. Today, it's still not possible to be sure of what was the criterion of division of the building between men and women or private wing of the emperor versus wing of the court. It's possible to assert that the two rooms adjoining the court were configured as preparatory rooms or tepidarium and warm room or calidarium. The latter have lower floors and higher thresholds than the others, and the openings in these rooms were very small and placed very high. Two small windows on the side of the chimney flue facing the atrium, and a small window widely splayed to capture the greatest possible light from the outside west, not dispersing the internal heat. One can think of the massive presence of hot water pores on the floor. They were equipped with a fireplace to heat the room and toilets with cold running water that, like in the hammams, were used to chill from time to time, to recover from extreme heat of the adjoining room, to wash with soaps and ointments, and to host the massages.
Le sale con l'accesso sul retro.
The halls with access to the back of the monument were probably used by the attendants, to whom an entrance at the back was reserved. Numerous attendants had to make the structure work, from the supply of wood for the chimneys, to the preparation of creams and ointments, to the preparation of the hydraulic apparatus. On the upper floor, a wooden walkway, certainly shielded, ran along the octagonal perimeter of the atrium and allowed access and secondary communication between the rooms. The rooms, equipped with fireplaces, were rooms with high humidity, sudatorium and laconicum. They were steam baths, used for treatments well known in the Oriental world, based on purifying sweat baths and inhaling vapors combined with various essences.
Le nicchie laterali.
The side niches of the chimney hoods have black and white incrustations, which suggest the evaporation of therapeutic substances and medicinal essences. On the stone benches, one stopped and gave oneself to the care of the maids and servants, and anointed his body with special ointments. The doctors prepared medicinal and alchemical curative solutions to be administered to the emperor, burning and combining salts and metals such as mercury and sulfur, as evidenced by the incrustations found on the sides of the chimneys.